Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. I have been solving data sufficiency problems out of this book here, GMAT Review, the official guide, the 12th edition. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You should be able to find it at mba.com. The problem that I'm about to solve is the one that you're going to find on page number 276, the very last problem, number 45. Let's see what it has to say. It says, if R is constant, alright, R is constant, and A subscript n, that just means nth A. If n were 1, that would mean first A, n would be A to the A with the subscript 3 means the third A, and the fifth A, and so on and so forth, in a series of A that we're going to generate. Equals R times n. And n is the number that you're at. For all positive integers n, see, they have to be positive integers. The question simply is, for how many values of n, for how many values of n is a to the n less than 100? That's the question. And before I go further into this thing and I start solving the problem, I want to make sure that you understand this problem as to what exactly we're dealing with. So let's start with some simpler example. For example, the simplest example would be, see, I'm trying to make you understand this concept here. R is your constant. For example, we may have a relationship like this, very simple relationship, A equals 5 times B. Here 5 is called proportionality constant. What this simply means is that A is in direct proportion to B. In other words, when B goes up, A goes up. How much does it go up by? It goes up by exactly 5 units, hence the constant. It goes up always by the same increment. Here it happens to be 5. So when B is 1, A is 5. When B is 2, A is 10. When B is 10, A is 50. And when B is 50, A is 250. See, 50 times 5, 250, and so on and so forth. It always goes up by same increment. That increment that you have, this incremental change, if there is such an expression, is constant. It goes up by same exact fixed value. Do you understand? Here, that constant happens to be R. So if it makes it easier for your life, if it makes it simpler for you to understand, just imagine this A being this A, and R is your constant that we have to find out for how many values. For example, here, we can ask you the same question. Here we go. Why are we going to do that right now? Okay, I'm going to ask you the same questions. For how many values of B, this B right here, for how many values of B is this A less than 100? Same exact question is this one. For how many values of B is A less than 100? Can you tell me the answer? Let's erase this thing so we can concentrate on it. How many? The answer is 19. There are 19 values of B if B has to be positive integers. A and B are positive integers. We are told that in the problem. We are told in the problem, they clearly tell you that these have to be for all positive integers n. For all positive integers n. So if B is integer, if B is an integer, A also is going to be an integer, but this is not necessary. So we know that B is an integer. It's a positive integer, not just integer, but positive integer, which limits our scope. Had we simply said that B is an integer, then there are infinite possibilities as to the scenarios where A is less than 100. Because then we have to consider all the negative integers. But here there are only 19 possibilities. There are only 19 possibilities where A is going to be less than 100. When B is 1, A is 5. When B is 2, A is 10. When B is 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. When B is 10, A is going to be 50. When B is 19, 19 times 5 is 95, A is 95. B cannot be 20. Had B been 20, 20 times 5 is 100, but A, here we are told, is less than 100. So this might be a question here. For how many values of, well, the relationship is this here, but the question is for how many values of B is for how many values of B is A less than 100? In this case, the answer would be 19. That's what we have to figure out what this R is. If this R happens to be 5, the answer would be 19. If this R happens to be 10, the answer will be something different. We'll find out. That's our job, to figure out what that R must be, the constant, the proportionality constant must be. So let's solve it. Enough of the talk. The first statement tells us, and before we analyze the first statement, since this is a data sufficiency problem, let's write down A, D, B, C, E. That's the first thing we do before we start the solution. So now I'm starting the solution to the problem that they give us. They tell us that the 50th A with the 50th subscript of 50 equals 500. But A with the subscript of 50 means wherever I see N, I replace it with 50. So it becomes R times 50. Well, R times 50, it implies that R must be 10. So there you go, there is your answer. There are 10 values of R for how many values of N, not 10 values of R rather, for how many values of N is A to the N less than 100? The answer is 10. There are 10 values of N for which this guy is going to be less than 100. Because the proportionality constant, we just found out, the proportionality constant we found out, there is 10. So actually it will be 9, because when R is 10, N cannot be 10, because 10 times 10 would be exactly 100. So to answer to this question, for how many values of N is N less than 100, the answer would be 9, 1 through 9. When N is 1, since we just found out that R is 10, when N is 1, first N is going to be 10, then 2 times 10 is 20, and so on and so forth, up to 9. So the first statement by itself is enough to answer this question. For how many values of N is N less than 100, the answer here would be 9. So first statement by itself is enough. That tells us that the answer cannot be B, C, or E. Let's look at second statement. Now remember, if the second statement is enough by itself to answer the question, then that answer cannot be any different than this answer. We'll find out. Because if you get a different answer, if this says R is 10 and based on the second statement you do the work and you find out that R is 12, something has gone rotten. The statements are always consistent. The informations are always consistent. The second statement tells us the 100A, the value of the 100A plus the value of the 105th A equals 2005. I shouldn't have taken up this much room up there because now I'm getting lower and lower and lower. 100A means 100 times R. 100 times R plus 105 times R, because N is 105, so I put it in here. 105 times R, we are told is 2050. Let's take out the R common. 100 plus 105, which is same as 205. R times 205 equals 250. Well, if you were to divide both sides by 205, you will see R equals 10. Same exact value. But the point here is that this was unnecessary work. We didn't have to do any of this thing. If you are able to realize at this point, you should be able to realize it's a simple linear equation. Of course, we can solve for R. All of this part was unnecessary. I was doing it just for learning purposes. Because there's a difference between doing the problem in the exam. You should do these questions for two ways. First, do it untimed and learn all the math that is required there, because this same exact question could very well appear in a multiple choice question. And it's not actually complicated math. So as you can see, R equals 10. So second statement by itself is also sufficient. That tells us that the correct answer is D. That's all. So solve it two ways. First, do it, all the math that is required, actually solve the bloody thing is to figure out what it is. And then second time around, just at the same time while you're doing it, you should be able to say to yourself that this part I'm about to do from this point on is unnecessary. We're just doing it out of curiosity. At this point, we should be able to tell that we can easily solve for R. Same thing here. If 500 equals r times 50, then of course we can solve for r, which is not a big deal, only takes a second. Anyway, that was the end of it. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you did not, I hope that I did a decent job explaining it. If you wish to get hold of me for personal private tutoring, either face-to-face tutoring or over the internet through Skype or through the telephone and so forth, go to my website and send me an email. Go to www.prep4gmat.com or keshwaniprep.com and send me an email. Alright? Thanks.